So, the question I have for you today is, how are we sowing seeds of coping? The words that we're speaking to ourselves, to our children, the actions that they see, the conversation that we have with them. How are we sowing seeds of coping? And when you look at the definition of cope, COPE, it is to deal with an attempt to overcome problems and difficulties. And when I think about the definition, when I look at the definition, I also too want to break down some of those words in there. And it's going to be as I talk about ways that we can help our children and in actuality help ourselves to cope with life experiences, life events. And so we know what it is the ability to or the attempt to deal with or overcome situations in life, difficulties, problems, issues. And when we think about this and we look at side by side the issues that we see in life, the life events, the homicides, the suicides, the the teenage pregnancy, the teenage suicide, bullying, um, recklessness, whether it's driving, and the foods that we eat, and the activities that we do, and the words that we say to others. We must look at our underlying beliefs about life events, period. What are these experiences as part of my curriculum, as part of what I even may create for myself? Because when we judge others, I believe we create circumstances that show us that we are not to judge, right? We may be put in a similar circumstance. We may feel what it feels like. And I often have said that if you lack the virtues or if you do not practice them, they will come into your life to help remind you of who you are. And so when I think about, again, the life events that we have, how are we directly and indirectly contributing to this world consciousness? Because everything starts on the individual level. That somehow we are affecting or creating the future by the words, the thoughts that we hold on to consistently, the words that we speak, and our actions. And when I think of the role of a parent or a caregiver, part of our role is to help guide our children through life, to help provide, to help sow the seeds so they can remember the divine spirit that they are. We do that in what we do and what we say. That it's no longer just listen to my words, don't look at my actions. Just listen to what I tell you, and that's what you base your life choices off of. But we know in actuality, our children look at our how we respond to life, our actions, and they listen to what we say, and not only to what we say, but what we don't say. They're looking at our emotions, our gestures. Are we nervous when we speak? Are we tapping? Are we frowning? Are we, blinking our eyes several times? Our eyes are telling the truth, saying we're not telling the truth in this moment. My son, when we went to visit the school that we were looking at putting them in, the public school, because of our move, he said, "Mom, I don't think he was telling the truth." Throughout our conversation, he didn't even look at me. And so children are not only hearing what you say, but they're seeing that what you do, that nonverbal communication, that is majority of the conversation. Because people will literally turn you off and just look at how you're behaving, will make a judgment about that. And so if we are yelling at people, if we're honking our horns, if we're racing past cars and getting in their way, if we are cursing or calling people outside their names, if we're stereotyping, labeling others, don't mess with this group of people because they do this, you're beneath them. If we are judging others, if we are um, telling ourselves that life has no meaning, has no purpose, if we have unhealthy coping habits ourselves, as the caregivers, as the parents, as the spiritual guardians, why are we questioning that our children are doing the same thing? So many times, being around well, you don't know, but being around my niece, and I would do something and I put my hand on my hip, and shortly thereafter she say the same thing, put her hand on her hip. Better yet, we were at a football game this past Sunday, and it's the kids playing, right? 7, 8, 9 year olds playing football. And all of a sudden there's this crowd next to us that started yelling at the kids and the coaches. Get in the game. What are you doing? And and I said something to shortly after that, a little girl, probably 5, 6 year old, saying, yelling, get in the game. What are you doing? And I said, that's how it happens. That's how it happens. That children often want to imitate those they are around the most. So when you think about peer pressure, when you think about family pressure, we look to people that are older than us often to show us the way, to show us how to respond to events. And when I look at the definition of cope, and it says, again, to deal with and attempt to overcome problems and difficulties. And even in that definition, I have an issue with. Because if we look at problems and difficulties, how does that make you feel? We often sometimes will tense up. We could feel our muscles in our back, our neck, and our hands and our legs. And problems and difficulties. They already have, to me, some sort of, even though they're just a word, but when I look at that, I think like negative, like it automatically thinks I'm gonna have to address this problem. And you can go from a different ways. You can see it as a negative, you can see it as a positive, and that it challenges you. But just like when I was a child, and I said I want to be basically the student of life approach was growing within me. And one of the things I said is that I'm going to change mistakes for life lessons. I'd like for you and challenge you to see problems and difficulties, to change that to life events and experiences, to opportunities to bring out the best in you. That within us are the seeds of greatness, the seeds of resiliency, power, strength, um, fearlessness, happiness, self control, self mastery. That within us are those seeds, along with our gifts, our talents, our beliefs, our purpose in life. And often when we see problems, or see things as in a negative light, or see things in a negative light, we can kind of stop and procrastinate and start believing that we can't overachieve that. But if we see it as an opportunity to reflect the truth, to bring out the best in us, it'll get to a point, and I know that we'll not see problems. We'll just see them as a way of life, as not a way of life, but as just another event, another event that I just need to work out and move forward. That we limit, when we see it that way, we limit the amount of time that we spend in the past, the amount of time that we spend groping, the amount of time that we let anger and jealousy and fear and resentment and vengeance build up in us, because we see it as another opportunity, and then we move forward. That often you have done things, if you think about it as a child, some situations where where you didn't think about it, or you thought less about it, you took care of it, you passed over it. When we got up from walking to standing, it just sort of happened. It wasn't a problem. It was part of life, part of this earthly curriculum, to show who we are, not to make us worse, not to make us bitter, but to show that experiences don't define us. And I'm starting to get into how can we transform our minds, because whatever we teach, whoever we are, we teach. So if we're bitter, if we're upset, if we get up, cry, if we spend hours crying and feeling sad for ourselves, blaming, guilt, that transfers often to our children. They see us. Oh, that's the way that if that happens to me, that's a way that I can do it. If that happens to me, I can just curse people out. If that happens to me, I can just kill them or shoot at them. If that happens to me, I can just get pregnant and then they won't talk about me no more because I'll be right where they are. And so we need to change what they see in the if this happens, this is who I must be. And the way we do that is that we have to look at our lives as parents, as guardians, and say, how am I coping with life events? What beliefs do I have about me and what occurs in life? Do I believe I must always struggle? I told you a belief that I had in puberty. I believed that it was a struggle. And it took literally my brother saying, Tamika, this person doesn't struggle like you. And ding, there was a wake up call that I didn't need to struggle. And ding, just like that, my mind opened up, or actually, yes, my mind opened up. I was more receptive to other possibilities of dealing with this life event. I was more open, more I didn't see that brick wall anymore. It wasn't there. It wasn't there to begin with. I actually put it there. But it was through me being open to what my brother told me that the brick wall crumbled. And I was able to walk through, and my life changed for the better in that respect. And not only when we realize the truth, when we crumble these walls, we tend to crumble other walls of limitations and lack. We open our minds up to I don't need to struggle like that. There is freedom on the other side of truth. And so, how can we help our children to cope? There is a Bible verse. Whether you believe in the Bible is not an issue that I take up. I don't force you to believe anything that you don't want to believe. What I do when I read the Bible as a child and when I read it now, what resonates within me? And I sent a post out in social media. that the atoms of your being vibrate to the truth. They know who you are, they know why you're here. And so when you feel this good feeling, because it's not one that's going to tell you you're stupid or make you feel sad and blue and um, lack and just dumb, stupid, whatever those thoughts that have been going in your head, the record player, the weeds that have been growing and sprouting in your mind, in your inner garden, in your being, that's not truth. That's illusion. Illusion will have you feeling worse, will have you believing something that is untrue, that is unlike yourselves. When we say people did stuff and it was unlike them, they were in an illusion. They were processing an illusion. And so when we think about training a child, I think it just makes sense that we are our children's first teachers. We have the opportunity to train them in a way that they go, that they will never depart from it. And it's with the truth. It's what builds and not destroys, lifts and not put down, but help people become who they are. So one of the things that I believed as a child is that we do not label. No matter what, the experience is the experience. When we start saying, and I still even today will find and catch myself saying it, and I'll say, no, 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 it's not good. But even things like good and bad, that's labeling stuff. Because you act a certain way typically if something is good versus bad, right? Bad brings negative feelings often. And that can lead to depression and anger and all those hosts of other like-minded emotions and feelings. So one thing is to remove labels from them, because I found even sickness, if we believe that we are sick, we have this label and this label says sick or disease. If we believe that, then eventually that's who we become. Dr. Wayne Dyer talked about it. Louise Hay, and You Can Heal Yourself, and in her book, um, many great leaders have talked about it. Dr. Miles Monroe, James Allen, even in his book, James Allen, As a Man Thinketh, which is a verse from the Bible. So when we think about labels are often at the foundation of many destructions, the foundation of living, um, not living your life with meaning and purpose, the foundation of suicides, homicides, the foundation of being in a career that doesn't feed you, that doesn't nourish you from the inside out, limitations and lack, the foundation. That we hold on to these beliefs and thoughts that deter us from our truth. And even thinking that there are problems versus experiences and opportunities. Number two is that we must plant the belief that what my mom told me when I was a child, and it continue it plays often. It played when I felt like I lost myself, when I was dealing with anxiety, creating situations of my own anxiety, and being in that storm, and actually stepping back from the storm and really seeing the storm as it is, and then the storm clearing, is that we must believe that we are in control of our thoughts, how we perceive events, and that we have the ability to transcend experiences, to jump over hurdles, to move barriers. Said even with, if you believe that you can move a mountain, that mountain will move. If you have the faith of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. Believe believe that we have the ability to overcome, to find the right solution, to find the right work. Because many of us are angry. We're in jobs that we don't like, and we think others should suffer and struggle. And therefore, we feed that. We try to sow those seeds to our employees, right? And the people that we're around. And then you wonder why an organization, school, business, any other business organizations, why the staff is unhappy. Leadership. You go look at the staff and you wonder why there's a problem. Meet the leader in that organization. And I've found that out in many circumstances. Meet the leader. If the children is unhappy, if the children aren't happy, if the children is struggling, then we have to look inside ourselves and say, what am I doing to cause that? And it's not about blaming or shaming. It's not about judgment, but it's about getting to the other side of truth. It's about living an abundant life in all realms, in mind, body, and spirit. It is about doing the work that we are here to do and making sure our children know that they too have a purpose. They have a divine purpose, gifts, talents that, wasted time and energy and money is on cultivating anger and frustration and resentment and bitterness because of how we see our experiences and how we're spending our time, thinking and rethinking about situations. When you think about PTSD, we're allowing that past to continue to replay in our mind until we say, no more, no more storm. When I think about Jesus being on the boat and the storm are those experiences in our lives. And how we can keep the storm up is when we fear them. Fear is one of those emotions that keeps storms alive. And just by realizing that we are in control, do then the storms, we stand outside the storms and we watch it pass, or the storms disappear. That's how powerful we are. To embrace opportunities to show our strengths, to show that our creativity, right? When we feel that there's lack and we change it around, say that can't be lack. There is a supply for every demand. I've recently had that happen where people have told me my son's contact lenses, they weren't going to be here. They're more than likely weren't going to be here on a certain day. And I say, there is a God. When I said that statement, I believed that anything is possible. And sure enough, not only did it come before Friday, it came that Monday. We talked to them on Friday, the previous Friday. When you believe, the power of belief, the power of embracing your opportunities, and also to not seeing them, you see them, but you don't accept that's the only answer. You know that if you need it, the answer, the solution is there. So the experience does not define your reaction. You define your reaction based on your beliefs. Also, to discussion, I think we should, as caregivers, mothers, fathers, um, cultivate a relationship that our children feel they can come to us, because it is through discussion that I believe that more insight and wisdom take birth. That we are nourishing those seeds, knowledge, wisdom, insight. And the more we nourish that, the more growth we see in the spiritual realm, the spiritual nature of our children, the spiritual nature of us. The more we see that, the more alignment we have with the spirit. So the more alignment we become is because we start to see things as they are, as opportunities and not the downfall of you. So I just want to share. So labels, no labeling, belief, cultivating, planning belief, embracing our opportunities, and open for discussion. because not only do we grow, our children grow, but we grow too as well. And then we see that we are a child too, an older child. More, we're here to guide these children, but we are a child and we're aligned and we treat our children with respect and we just look forward every day to just cultivating our relationships and just growing spiritually, evolving. So I wanted to share that with you. I hope that this episode has been beneficial to you. Remember, we break the cycle of pain by dismantling the thoughts that created it in the first place. And through this dismantling, we continue to evolve and we do the work that we're here to do. I have also too restarted my newsletters, empowering you to be Notes on Life, empowering you to be you. And I will put the link in this podcast information box so that you have that. And don't forget to see me on come in and join on Facebook Live on Mondays, where I'm looking at barriers to achieving your purpose. I've talked about doubt recently this week. I've talked about others' opinions, and I am also on other social media, so YouTube, etc. I do have a channel, but I am here to tell you to make this lifetime great, because regardless of what happened, you still can. You have to define what greatness is, and because you are alive, you still have that opportunity. Talk to you soon.